Hi, here we are at the Four Bells Fitness Emporium for workout from home number 9. Is that 9? That's 10. 9, there we go. Today is workout number 3 at the end of week number 1 of our push-up cycle. So as you noticed, we've got 3 workouts a week coming. Monday, Wednesday, Friday is how we structure them for our group classes, even for the people who were regularly at the gym, or even for the people now who are at home. So that means that what you're going to see over the next 6 weeks is 2 upper body days and 1 lower body day. So today's day is a day that helps to supplement the push-ups that we're trying to do. So we are looking at more upper body pushing today, but with different mechanical positions. So we are looking at dips today. And depending on what equipment you have, depending whether you're at home with full gym equipment or whether you're at home with very limited equipment, again, as always, dictates what kind of work we're going to do. So we're going to talk about our warm-up very quickly first today. Our warm-up is the first warm-up we ever did when the gym opened. It's still a warm-up we do now, and is a warm-up that I think has tremendous value just for general mobility. And now in these times where we're at home a lot and sitting a lot more than maybe we were before, it has an even bigger impact now. So our warm-up today is 4 out of the 5 rights of Tibetan yoga. If you know the 5 rights of Tibetan yoga, the first one is spinning in a circle. We're not going to spend any time talking about that. As I always say, if you want to spin in a circle, you can do that on your time, not my time. Normally, when the 4 out of 5 rights are done, they are normally done with the 4 movements that we choose to do. They're usually done in one longer set. I have the shortest attention span of all time, so I split those 4 movements up into 2 rounds, where I do 10 reps of each per round. So let's talk about those 4 exercises now. Okay, so the 4 out of 5 rights of Tibetan yoga has been a warm-up we've been using at the gym since the gym's first day ever, which I believe was the 5th of June 2017. I have personally been using this warm-up for a lot longer than that. I used to use it a lot when I worked my office job, and I used to travel and go to hotels all the time, which usually when you're traveling to a hotel, just like if you're working out from home, there's not much equipment available or even space available for you to do maybe a more dynamic warm-up than you would normally do. The beauty about the 4 out of 5 rights of Tibetan yoga is that it kind of covers movements that cover general mobility and flexibility to everybody. So if you come at me with something very specific, like, oh, I've got some issues with my QL, oh, what do I do about that? Then the 4 out of 5 rights of Tibetan yoga isn't going to cover that, but it does cover the majority of mobility issues. It covers hip flexion and hip extension, covers hamstring flexibility, shoulder flexion, the very rare shoulder extension. It looks at even a little bit of stretching the abs. It covers a huge gambit of things. So let's talk about the 4 movements we're going to do. So why don't we do 5? Well, the 5th one, as we mentioned before, is spinning round in a circle. If you're into your chakra spinning and your vortexes spinning, that's perfectly fine. We've got no problem with that, but we're not going to spend our time doing it today. Instead, we're going to start with our first movement, which is a very simple leg raise. So with the leg raise, all I need to do is realize there's 2 levels available. Level 1 is very nice. I have my hands tucked underneath my bum. I'm going to raise the legs up. Heels rest on the floor. I bring the heels up to the ceiling and back down to the heels resting on the floor. I'm going to do 10 reps of those. Level 2, to make it more interesting, is to bring the hands up to the side. I have less leverage off the butt, which makes my leg raise a little bit more challenging to do. So that's our simple leg raise. From there, we come into the dynamic camel. So the dynamic camel, hilarious name, but really good for flexibility in the quads and the hip flexors and even into the low abs. So I start kneeling, and all I'm going to do is hinge, push the hip back, and then drive the hips forward, squeeze the glutes, and try and lean back as much as possible. I should feel a big stretch up the quad, through the hip flexor and into the abs. That's level 1. If that's super easy, feel free to do that. If you want to make it a bit more spicy, I'm going to come onto the toes, curl those toes under, give myself a lobster pinch on the heel, and then from here I drive the hips forwards, chest up, head back. And again, we're just trying to cover opening the hips as much as possible. Big extension through the spine, big extension through the hips. With our 3rd exercise, the tabletop. The tabletop I prefer to do without the mat. Now, the way to start this, first of all, is to sit into an L sit. So if you're sitting in an L sit and immediately you're like, all my hamstrings are hurting, my calves are hurting, and I'd much rather be doing this, it's a pretty good indicator straight away that you have some tight hamstrings along that fascial line, along the back of the body. So you might need to look at wanting to stretch your hamstrings a little bit first. From here, when it comes to starting, I want to have the hands by the hips. The hand position is going to depend on how your shoulders feel. Do you like the hand forwards, to the side? Do you like it turned back? Entirely up to you in terms of personal preference of what you like to use. For me, I have my fingers pointing forwards and I press into the floor so that my bum comes off the floor. We usually get two bits of feedback here at the Four Bells as to why people can't get their bums off the floor. One is I have short, stubby arms, and the second is I have a big booty. Well, the good thing about having a big booty is I like you, and I like big butts, and that's why it's impossible for me to lie. From here, I push into the floor. I raise the hips up into the ceiling, into that tabletop position. Big position of extension for the shoulders. We stretch out the pecs and the shoulders. I come back through. And the idea here is as I bring the hips through, is trying not to let the bum touch the floor and relax. I come up to the ceiling, back down, up to the ceiling, and try and let that bum just skim the floor if we can. Last but not least is the hilariously titled pump, which is basically downward facing dog into up dog. Now, I'm not pretending I'm a yoga instructor, because I'm definitely not, but we all know those positions and have heard them before. So I'm going to start with my hands directly below the shoulders, knees below the hips. I'm going to dig those toes into the floor, drive the heels down, hips to the ceiling, and then from here, what I'm going to do is shift my weight forwards, hips to the floor, really stretching out the hips, stretching out the abs and the low back. And as I drive the hips to the ceiling, I'm trying to push the heels to the floor, stretch out the calves and the hamstrings, and then try and bring my nose towards my toes, trying to open those shoulders. So we're just going to come hips to the floor, hips to the ceiling. With our warm-up today, we're going to do 10 reps of those 4 movements. We're going to do that for 2 rounds, and that is our warm-up today. Okay, so workout from home number 9, the strength piece today. So as I mentioned just before we started the warm-up, today's focus is upper body pushing again. But as always, if you notice the way we write programming here at Four Bells, we like to do an antagonist pairing, which means you'll usually see some kind of push with a pull. If you're doing a pull day, you'll have some kind of push in there to try and balance out the shoulder girdle. And the same is of course true for the lower body. Today's focus, when we're looking at upper body, as I said before, is dips. So depending on whether you're at home with gym equipment or whether you're at home with limited equipment, we have a few options available for you. Today we are going to be doing 5 working sets. Each set is 3 minutes long. Within that 3-minute window, we have 2 options available. Option number 1 is I'm at home with gym equipment. Maybe I have dip bars available, and maybe I have a chin-up bar available. With our dips today, we're going to be doing a fairly low rep range, which means we'll be doing 5 reps on a dip and 3 reps on a chin-up. The idea here is with this low rep range is that the intensity should be high. So that means if you can already do a dip or you can already do a chin-up, it's finding ways to make them more challenging. So does that mean for you that you're going to add weight onto you somehow, some way? Does that mean if you don't have a weight belt available, can I increase the eccentric, so the lowering phase in a dip or the lowering phase in a chin-up to make those reps harder? The big conversation we've been talking about over our Zoom classes we've been doing is trying to find inventive ways to make things more challenging with limited resources. Speaking of limited resources, if we are doing this at home today and it comes to doing dips or some kind of pull, then it's safe for me to assume that when you're doing this is that you don't have dip bars available. So what do I have available? So because I would assume that maybe you've got the edge of a chair, maybe like a trunk or a box or something to put your hands on, maybe you've got some stairs, that because those dips would be a little bit easier, we're going to increase that rep range slightly. So we're going to go from 5 reps to now we are doing 10 reps of a dip. And again, we're going to talk about options to how to make that harder. And if you are doing some kind of row, maybe you can't do a chin-up. Maybe you don't have a chin-up bar available to you. So we're going to talk about rowing options. Could be ring rows if you've got rings attached to a tree in your back garden. Could be door rows with just a simple strap over the door. Either way, we're doing dips for 10 reps, rows for 10 reps, and that's what we're doing for our 5 sets today. So let's talk about those movements now. Okay, so dip options for our strength piece today. As always, we kind of have to toss it up between what equipment do I have available, what makes my shoulders feel good, what kind of rep range should I be picking depending on my level of intensity. So what I said at the kind of the board talk at the beginning there is if you do have dip bars available, maybe you're keeping those rep ranges a little bit low, maybe you're doing 5 reps. And if you're at home with maybe just a bench available and you're a fairly advanced dipper, maybe you're doing those reps a little bit higher. But that doesn't always have to be true. You could still have dip bars available at home, but you're still working on your dip journey, so those reps are a little bit lower. So feel free to play around with that rep scheme depending on the equipment available for you. When it comes to dips, as always, if you have dip bars, we're going to talk about dip bars. If you have them, if you don't have them, we're going to talk about some options. If I have dip bars available, they are wonderful because that means my body can move in between the dip bars and it puts a little bit less strain on the shoulder. But as always, I want to have the hands right by the hips, and you can start with the legs bent, and as always, making sure that I'm not shrugging the shoulders. I push the shoulders away from the ears. Shoulders come down as I try to get the shoulder below the elbow if possible, and then come back to a locked out position. If bent legs is too easy, you can make the legs straight. If that's too easy, find a box to put your feet on. If that's too easy, get a plate, get a kettlebell, watch your tender zone and put that on the lap. If that's pretty easy, then we should be talking about doing full body weight dips. As always, the pecs are internal rotators, which means that ideally when we're doing our dips, we want to be facing in. Otherwise you'll find if you do it with it facing out, it doesn't mean you're going to get injured, but it does mean it's going to put a little bit more stress on the shoulder as the shoulder is in external rotation. So, from here, I come up, locked out position, I'm going to come down, shoulders below the elbow if possible, and from there we press back up. So, I don't have dip bars available. What do I have available to me if I'm at home? You might have a bench, you might have some steps, you might have a very low counter, or even a high counter, and you can find some way to put your feet on something. So again, always about trying to be inventive in these times. The only thing that concerns me about a bench or doing bench dips or tricep dips or whatever they're sometimes called is that because the hand is now going to be on the bench and when I set up it's going to be a little bit behind the hip, is that it can put a little bit of stress on the front of the shoulder. So always pay attention to what's happening with your shoulders. If you feel good and you feel happy, happy days. And if you don't, you might have to play around with a different option. So if I'm doing this on the edge of a bench, make sure the hands are firmly planted down, shoulders away from the ears, a nice full range of motion as always. And again, if that's easy, find some way to elevate your feet. Last but not least, as that can be a little bit of an injurious option, this is an option that could work for you as well. Let's imagine these two small boxes are 2 dining room chairs. Of course, making sure you don't have a slippery floor where things are going to move around. My advice to you is put your hands on the edge of those chairs, make sure they're not moving around, nice low dip if we can, and then pressing up again. So find the option that works best for you. If you have gym equipment, that's fantastic. If you don't, get creative, and again, play around with the rep range depending on the intensity of the movement you choose. Okay, so pull-up options, not pull-up options, chin-up options for today. Let's get it right. Chin-up options, of course, means that we're doing some kind of upper body pulling. Do I have a chin-up bar available to me at home? Do I not have a chin-up bar? And as always, we've got to think about those options. If I do have a chin-up bar, the idea is to do 3 reps today. So if you have a bar available, that could be just 3 reps of body weight. It could be 3 negatives, focusing on the eccentric phase. Or if you're a little bit more advanced and you chin up journey, then it could be getting that weight belt, adding those plates onto the belt and making your body a little bit heavier. So if I'm doing a chin up, as always, means supinated grip. Sup is how we remember supinated grip. Hands should be just outside of shoulder width, making sure that the intention being that I drive my elbows back past the body. So I pull myself up, chin fully over the bar, and back down to a full extension. If a chin up is not happening, maybe the negative is the next option. Starting near the bar, I'm going to hop up. The reason why I like that is for a lot of people is when they jump up, they can drive the elbow back. It creates a little bit more engagement through the bicep and the lats. So again, play around with the height that feels good for you when you're working on your negative. I jump up, pause, and then from there, down nice and controlled, over I'd say about 5 seconds to a straight arm. So, if you're looking at that going, oh that's great Mark, but I don't have a chin-up bar available, then of course, there's things like rings. If you have a tree in your back garden and you have some straps, You could maybe do ring rows today in our body weight alternative at home. Maybe if you don't have rings available, but you have 2 kettlebells or 2 dumbbells, you could do some bent over rows. If you're looking for a little inventive one, come with me. We're going to head out to the washroom. We're going to look at door rows. So as always, when I've said about using the door row, is can I use like a strap of some kind? So when I'm using that strap, it's very simple. All I'm looking to do is find a nice sturdy door. So here is the strap. All I'm going to do is take it. I'll make a very simple knot. It's simple, don't make it fancy. I then put my strap over the door. We then close the door. Make sure we pull that down so the knot is there. I then have the hands set up, and the lower I have the hands, which in turn is going to make my body a bit lower, is going to affect the intensity of that row. I set the feet up, lean back, driving the elbows back, working on those rows. Are you laughing over there, Cameron? Did you hit yourself?
No, I saw myself in the mirror.
You saw yourself in the mirror. Oh no, giving the secrets away. That is what we are looking for with our door rows today. Try and get as creative as possible, and if you're not sure what to do, send us a message. Okay, so workout from home number 9, looking at today's conditioning piece. So today's conditioning piece is a 16-minute alternating EMOM. What does that mean if you don't know what EMOM stands for? EMOM stands for every minute on the minute. For some reason, some people do put the T in EMOM for the minute, but some people don't. We don't here just because we're lazy. We don't like writing extra letters that we don't have to. So with the term EMOM, what it really means is there's some work to do as soon as that minute begins. If you've got a timer and it beeps, that means within that minute, you're trying to get that work done as quickly as possible to maximize rest time. But of course, we're always moving within parameters of movement quality. So it doesn't mean just flapping through movements as fast as possible, trying to make the most of those movements. So we have 4 1-minute stations that we are going to do 4 times for a 16-minute workout today. In my first minute, I'm going to be doing 10 per arm of a dumbbell plank row. If you don't have dumbbells, we're going to talk about options of how to do this without dumbbells, or maybe just your body weight. From there, into our second minute, I'm going to do 10 per touch. We're going to talk about how that's going to work with bicycle abs, 20 reps total. In our third minute, be 10 to 15 push-ups, depending on where you are with your push-up journey. Are you able to do them on your toes? Do you need to do them on your knees? Are you doing them on the edge of the couch? Again, what do we have available to us right now? And last but not least, in our final 4th minute, we are doing 15 hanging knee raises, or if you don't have a chin-up bar available, it could be leg raises on the floor. So the idea should be is that with all 4 of these stations, is that we shouldn't let the work go further than 45 seconds, which means you might have to pay attention to your smartphone, pay attention to your clock, whatever you're using, to make sure that we do have a little bit of transition time between exercises. So ideally, each one of these takes no longer than 45 seconds to do. If it does take you a little bit longer, then I would say just reduce the rep range slightly. It doesn't have to be from like 20 to 5. I would say maybe take a couple of reps off and just play around with it as those minutes go through. So let's take a little bit of time now going over these 4 movements and options depending on what you have available. Alright, so the movements today that we're going to use for our 16-minute alternating EMOM. So as I said at the board, the idea with the EMOM is to try and get that work done as quickly as possible to maximize rest, but we always need to focus on form first. So our first movement is dumbbell plank rows. So we're going to be in a plank with dumbbells doing some rows. Fantastic for core stability, fantastic for shoulder stability, as well as a little bit of rowing action for the shoulder girdle. When we set up, we should be setting our dumbbells up shoulder width, so the hands should be straight down from the shoulders. When it comes to our dumbbell plank row, what I'm going to find is that the feet should be a little bit wider than my conventional plank base, which is normally around here for me. With the feet a little bit wider, it makes me a little bit more stable. I drive the elbow back and smooth down with the dumbbell. I'm not smashing the dumbbell into the floor, it should be nice and smooth on the way down. When I'm doing the row, it's trying to really work on that anti-rotational component. I'm not rowing and letting the hips move around all over the place. I'm trying to keep things still. If you don't have 2 dumbbells available, you only have 1. Maybe I'm doing all 10 reps on one side and then rolling over and doing 10 reps on the other. If you don't have dumbbells available, try doing your plank rows with just body weight, nice and slow and smooth as we alternate between 10 reps per side for 20 reps. When it comes to the bicycle abs, I see a lot of shenanigans done with this exercise when it's done. A lot of people kind of flopping around. It should be fairly slow and smooth. So I want to almost have like a hollow body abdominal feel to it. So I'm going to lay down on the floor. I'm going to put my hands behind my head, and the idea is to bring the elbow to the knee whilst the other leg is just off the floor. I slowly go from one side to the other. What I'm trying to avoid is this flapping around all over the place. Ideally, those reps, those 20 reps, 10 touches per side, should take at least 20 seconds to do. It's not about getting them through fast, it's about making sure the quality is there. Now, push-ups. When it comes to push-ups, am I doing push-ups on my toes? Am I doing push-ups on my knees? Do I have a box, something available to do my push-ups on? Maybe from here, I'm doing my push-ups on the stairs or on the bench that I used for dips earlier today. Last but not least, when it comes to the hanging knee raise, if you have a bar available, happy days. We jump up, 15 smooth reps with that hanging knee raise. If I don't have a bar available, maybe it's lying leg raises on the floor, just like we did in our warm-up today. And it could be hands underneath the bum. The only difference is now we're not letting those heels touch the floor, even though I think I just did. Or it could be hands out to the side. Either way, 15 reps is what we're looking for. We are doing dumbbell plank rows. What are we doing next? Bicycle abs, then it's push-ups, then it's leg raises of some kind. And we'll be doing that for 16 minutes.